People say fear always announces itself. A scream, a shadow, a sudden movement in the dark. That isn't true. Real fear is quiet. It waits. It watches. And by the time you notice it, it has already been with you for a long time. This first story was shared anonymously on a forum dedicated to unexplained experiences. The post was removed within hours, but screenshots still circulate. The user never logged in again. It happened during a 3-week power outage in a remote mountain town that most people don't even realize exists. The town only had one road in and one road out, and during the winter, both were often buried under snow. When the power went out, officials blamed old infrastructure and harsh weather. They promised repairs. They promised updates. What they didn't promise was communication. Cell service vanished within the first 2 days. Internet died shortly after. Radios only picked up static. By the end of the first week, the town felt like it had slipped out of the world entirely. At first, people tried to stay positive. Candles lit windows at night. Neighbors checked on each other. Small fires burned in barrels along the street to keep hands warm. But then the knocking started. It always happened after sunset. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 2 faster ones. Every time. At first, people assumed it was someone asking for help. The cold was deadly, and not everyone had enough supplies. Doors were opened cautiously. Shotguns were held behind backs. Flashlights swept across porches. No one was ever there. No footprints in the snow. No marks on the door. Nothing. By the 5th night, people stopped opening their doors. That's when the knocking moved inside. Not physically inside, but closer. Too close. It started coming from walls. From ceilings. From beneath floorboards. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 2 faster ones. Always the same pattern. People convinced themselves it was pipes contracting from the cold. Animals trapped beneath houses. Old wood shifting. Then someone knocked back. No one knows who did it. No one admitted to it afterward. But the moment those knocks were returned, everything changed. The sound came immediately. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 2 faster ones. Except this time, it wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from everywhere. Walls. Floors. Windows. The ground outside. The sky itself seemed to echo with it. People ran into the street screaming, only to find their neighbors frozen in place, heads tilted, listening. And then the voice came. It didn't shout. It didn't whisper. It spoke calmly, patiently, like it had all the time in the world. Thank you for answering. Lights flickered on across the entire town for the first time in weeks. Not electrical lights. Not street lamps. Every house glowed faintly from the inside, as if lit by something breathing. People who tried to leave found the road gone. Not blocked. Not buried. Gone. Where asphalt once stretched into the forest, there was now only a drop into darkness that didn't reflect light at all. By morning, the knocking stopped. So did half the town. Doors stood open. Fires burned unattended. Meals sat half-eaten on tables. Beds were warm, but empty. No bodies were found. No signs of struggle. Just absence. When rescue crews finally reached the town 2 weeks later, they found only 17 survivors out of nearly 80 residents. Every survivor told the same story. They all heard knocking on the inside of their skulls. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 2 faster ones. And every single one of them said the same thing when asked why they survived. I never answered. The second story comes from a night shift security guard working at a closed-down children's hospital on the edge of a large city. The building had been abandoned for years after funding was pulled. Mold. Asbestos. Structural damage. Officially, no one was allowed inside. Unofficially, it was a hot spot for urban explorers. That's why the guard was there. His job was simple. Sit in a small booth near the front gate. Watch the cameras. Call the police if someone broke in. He was alone every night from midnight to 6. The cameras barely worked. Most showed static or frozen frames. Only 3 were reliable: the front entrance, the main hallway on the first floor, and the elevator lobby. Nothing ever happened. Until one night in late October. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the elevator camera turned on. The guard hadn't activated it. No motion sensors triggered. It simply came to life. The elevator doors were open. Inside stood a child. She looked about 6 years old, barefoot, hospital gown hanging loosely from her shoulders. Her head was tilted slightly to the side, like she was listening to something the camera couldn't hear. The guard froze. Children weren't supposed to be there. No one was supposed to be there. He reached for the radio, but stopped when the child looked directly into the camera. Her eyes were wrong. Not glowing. Not hollow. They looked tired, exhausted in a way no child's eyes ever should. She raised her hand and pressed the elevator button.
The doors closed.
Every camera in the building went dark. The guard sat in silence, staring at static, heart pounding, telling himself it was a prank. A costume. Someone's sick joke. Then the radio crackled. Not with static. With breathing.
Slow. Deep.
Too close. A voice followed.
Soft.
Familiar. Can you help me find my room? The guard didn't respond. He couldn't. The voice repeated itself, this time closer, clearer. I keep waking up in the wrong place. Footsteps echoed outside the booth. Bare feet on concrete. The guard stood, locked the door, and hid beneath the desk. He watched through the booth window as a small hand pressed against the glass. Then another. Then many. Handprints appeared across every window, every surface, overlapping, pressing, smearing. Children's hands. All different sizes. The voice returned, no longer soft. Why won't you look at us? When morning staff arrived, they found the booth empty. Door locked from the inside. Camera footage erased from 2:17 onward. The guard was never found. Urban explorers who sneak into the building now report something strange. The elevators still work. They stop on random floors. And sometimes, when the doors open, there are small handprints on the inside. The final story is the most disturbing because it feels the most possible. It was shared by a college student who rented a cheap basement apartment beneath an elderly couple's. The place was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. No windows except a narrow strip of glass near the ceiling. Perfect for someone who wanted privacy. The first few weeks were normal. Quiet. Almost too quiet. The student worked late nights and slept during the day. He rarely saw the couple upstairs, but occasionally heard them walking, moving furniture, watching television. Then the sounds changed. Every night at exactly 1:11 a.m., something heavy would be dragged across the floor above him.
Slow.
Deliberate. Back and forth. He assumed it was furniture. Old people rearranging their house. Maybe they couldn't sleep. Then came the counting. A man's voice.
Weak.
Strained. 1, 2, 3.
Pause.
1, 2, 3. Always stopping at 3. Always restarting. The student messaged the landlord. The landlord apologized and said the couple was old and forgetful. Nothing to worry about. Then the footsteps began. Not upstairs. On the basement ceiling. As if someone were standing directly above him, pacing slowly, their weight pressing down through the plaster. One night, the student knocked on the ceiling with a broom handle. The counting stopped. So did the footsteps. For a moment, there was silence. Then the knocking came back. From below the floor. 3 slow knocks.
Pause.
2 faster ones. The student packed his bags the next morning. Before leaving, he decided to confront the couple, hoping to get some explanation. He knocked on their front door. No answer. He knocked again. The door creaked open. The house was empty. Furniture gone. Walls bare. Dust thick enough to show footprints leading only one way.
Down.
Into the basement. Police later confirmed the couple had died years earlier. The house had been sold, resold, and rented out multiple times since. No one could explain who had been walking upstairs. Or who had been counting. Or why every tenant left behind notebooks filled with the same message written over and over. Do not knock back. Because sometimes the worst thing you can do is let whatever is waiting know that you're there.